really, you all here gathered today, you're my safe spaces. You're my safe space. And I am indebted. Thank you very much. Thank you for making this a reality.
Let's join me and welcome the Senior Vice Chairman and the Editor-in-Chief of Leadership Newspaper. Please put your hands together for you.
Thank you very much. I'm not surprised because I've known you for quite a while. The danger of being around Tions is that you risk being dressed in borrowed robes, but I'm used to him. Thank you very much for these kind words and for a very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great honor for me to be here. You know what? These days I don't worry about the number of people who attend events physically, because it's possible for one or two or three people to be gathered somewhere, but the impact of that event may not be immediately apparent, but it's only a matter of time before whatever it is they do it properly, will begin to resonate. So, Ngozi, I don't think you should don't feel discouraged or despondent that there are just a few people. You are just starting. And particularly in this city of Abuja, there are a few things you soon find out about, apart from others that you find out about Nigerians generally. There are specific things you also find out about how Abuja responds to events, especially when those events are happening either early in the morning or afternoon on Fridays. You find out and get used to. But it's all right, okay? It's okay to start small. Then you scale up from there, all right? I'd like to particularly thank you for inviting me to share this moment. He said that he believes I'm your mentor. Now, I think the roles are reversed. Now you are mentoring me. It's really a great honor for me. And I say that, I'm not saying that lightly, because mental health and safe spaces, which you have asked me to comment upon, it's a new area for me personally. A new area in the sense of the concept, okay? And also in the context of the generation that I'm coming from. So that's why I say that you are mentoring me. So this is not in many other areas than in this specific area. So I'm obliged and very thankful to you for the opportunity to come here and learn some really new things. Which obviously reflects my training as a journalist, is to ask a few fundamental questions by way of starting. So what is the safe space? Okay. I know what's sort of become either vogue or become woke, whichever you feel comfortable to use to express it. So I tried to do a bit of desk research to find out. So I said this is a new it's a learning experience for me, so I tried to find out what exactly safe space. From the limited research that I've done, I found that safe space is either a physical or a virtual place where you can rest and recharge. I'm just making it as basic as it gets. It's either a physical or a virtual space or place where you can rest and recharge. It's also a place where you are free of harassment, of judgment, of discrimination, of victimization, of stigmatization. So these I have found are some of the essential elements. If it appears a bit too elementary, you must pardon me. I've already told you from the beginning that I'm starting from creche as far as this matter is concerned. So that is, as far as I understand it, the very basic definition of a safe space. And so then the next question, and it's also important that in a safe space, it's also, apart from the things I've said, it's also a place where you are seen, you can be heard, and that you are valued. These are additional qualities or attributes or attributes of safe space. And so the next thing then I try to ask myself is, why has safe space become a subject of not just Nigerian but of global concern? I mean, I remember that I said that some of us, it's actually something that we are learning, but has it that safe space has gained global resonance and attention? There are a number of reasons, in my view, why it's become a very important subject for all of us. I think the first of all is changing life patterns. Okay, life patterns are changing and they are changing rapidly. If I told my mother, my mother's concept of safe space, let's have so it's entirely different from my wife's, for example. Because as far as my mother was concerned, in the ghetto where I was raised, one room apartment in Lagos when I was raised. Safe space meant that whatever your parents did was right, and so if you tried to, create your own, it was unusual. I mean, and if there was any concept of, you were trying to express yourself differently from how your parents thought you should express yourself, they would beat the living daylights out of you. And then they beat that safe space. Your parents would beat safe space into you. Okay? But life is changing. And of course, it wasn't that they did it out of hate or out of spite. That was how they knew how to do it. That was how they were brought up. And of course, that was also how they brought their children up. But all of that is changing and changing rapidly. And we are bringing our children up differently from the way our parents brought us up. So changing life patterns, in my view, is one of the reasons why people are taking this issue of safe spaces and mental health a bit more seriously than I guess was the case in the past. I think another reason also why we're talking safe spaces today and mental health, we'll talk about the link between safe spaces and mental health before I close, because I'm sure that there are experts who will address you on this subject. There's also been, in my view, a near collapse of work-life balance. Okay? There was a time when you went to work. So my dad used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He was a storekeeper in Ababachi's MPA, all right? So he'd go to get up at like 4, 5, was off to work, he'd resume at 8 o'clock, and then by 4 o'clock, he had closed. That was, work for that day was over. But I guess it's a bit different today. We are all under pressure. As I'm here, I have all sorts of devices around me, and we're just all working perpetually. Even when we are sleeping, the tendency is for us. So that ultimately, that obviously would have its impact on our emotional and mental well-being. I think that another reason, in my view, is because of COVID-19. I think COVID-19 has also significantly escalated the interest in mental health, because that was a time when people were, all together. It was one life we had never seen, at least those who are not up to 100 years when it struck, okay? Because the last time it happened was over 100 years ago. So that created its own challenges, also because of the sort of things that the disinformation, the sheer amount of disinformation about what was happening in social media at that time. Also, it had its impact on children and young people and all of that, who were experiencing things that they had never ever experienced before, and we hope will never happen again. And of course, another reason is the economic difficulties brought on partly by COVID-19, changes in supply chain issues, and also the hardship all around the world, particularly how some countries are managing this hardship. All right, so people are under a lot of pressure. I mean, if you have to buy petrol at the price, I don't know how you'll buy it, but I buy for something like 1,000, 1,200. Well, last week it was 950 when I filled my pump. and I buy once a week. But this, I'm preparing for the throat slasher this time. Okay, and that obviously affects every other thing, including of course the price of fish. So if you have to spend that amount of money, and the opportunities for creating wealth are not as much as they used to, then of course another reason very quickly, because of the increasing abuse of substances, especially drugs, and UN agency that deals with this say about 14-15% of Nigerians use substances and abuse drugs. And then obviously that affects mental health, affects how we relate to others, affects the spaces around us. I think that finally for me, one of the reasons why safe spaces and mental health have become an issue is also, this issue has particularly been forced on us by Gen Z. Those, of course, born in the late 1990s up to around maybe 2000. They are, among other values that they are driving and changing, is also the issue of mental health and safe spaces. Now, finally, or before finally, I'll be done in about 2-3 minutes. What's the link? What's the link between safe space and mental health? How do they connect? And I'm thinking, I'm able to learn more of this. One thing for me that connects the two is the need to reduce pressure on our health systems, because our health system is very fragile as it is. And so if we have safe spaces and we live well, then they need to use healthcare facilities which are very difficult to pay for, or for services that are very expensive. Drugs these days to buy, I started borderline hypertensive. So when I first started using amlodipine and codavan, one was 3,000, the other was maybe 8,000 something. Now, each of those, especially codavan, costs you close to 30,000 naira for something that will last you for a month. So, what it means is that you need to be more intentional about your well-being and the spaces around you, so that the pressure on the health system will reduce. So that's just one reason. And there's also the need to break stigma for us to be more open. There's also the need, as I said, for our general and overall well-being. And finally, it also, safe spaces and solid mental health also create some sort of resilience amongst us as then finally, who is responsible? Because it's always important for us. Who is responsible for mental, for the safe spaces and the mental health we are talking about? I think I like agency. So the individual, for me, is front and center. You have to take responsibility for whatever taking place. And of course, families, because we're all members of families. Families have to create spaces that are safe for members, and then of course peers. Peer pressure is a huge source of mental health challenges. The workplaces, of course, have a role to play, and then communities as well. And then also regulators. And when I talk about regulators, I'm talking now about big tech, about big media, because we're all major consumers of big media now. The amount of pressure that comes from those virtual spaces is incredible, with trolls and all kinds of things happening in that space, and I think there's a huge call out on big media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or all the other Facebook platforms, to be more responsible about what sort of things they allow on these spaces. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not your lecturer. I'm sorry if I have spoken like one. I'm just a teacher. So thanks once again for having me and for inviting me. And I hope that we make this space and our hearts and our communities safer. I thank you all for listening.